In this episode, let's have a look at the Light Dome from Aputure, which is a softbox for the Aputure Light Storm COB 120T. Now, I was really excited about the Light Dome because the Light Dome is a perfect tool for producing soft light, which is really helpful for talking headshots. What it does, it produces a very nice, flattering, soft light that sort of wraps around someone's face, so there aren't any really harsh shadows. And really, that's the definition of soft lighting. Soft lighting is not less light. It is light that wraps a little bit more, and so the kind of the practical effect is that the transition from light to shadow is much more smooth. It's sort of like a gradient, whereas hard light goes from light to shadow very quickly with a hard line. So that's really the difference here, and that's what you're seeing in this particular case. Another nice thing about it is it has a tendency to smooth out wrinkles a little bit, fill in eyes quite nicely. It's just a really flattering look for most people. Now, what Aputure did with the Light Dome is they created a really deep silver-lined round softbox, which produces really soft light, but also retains a good bit of contrast, which is a really kind of a nice look. So you get plenty of punchy contrast, but at the same time, you get light that sort of gently lights someone's face and sort of falls off in a gentle fashion. In terms of setup, it comes in several pieces. So you have the adapter, first of all, which incidentally is a Bowens S-mount. So not only can you use it with the Aputure COB 120T, but you can use it with any light that has a Bowens mount, which is actually more and more we see lights hitting the market that actually use this mount. Now, setup is pretty straightforward. What's involved here is you have the mount that actually mounts the entire dome to the light. You then place each of the rods into the mount. Then using the Velcro that's included here, you set up the two diffusers. There's an inner diffuser and an outer diffuser. And the reason you have an inner diffuser is that prevents any sort of hot spots. So it prevents the light from being too much more intense in the middle of the light source versus out at the edges. The diffusion face is 34 inches in diameter, and it creates a large source, which is really flattering, especially when you move it in relatively close to your talent, because that's part of how you produce soft light. Not only do you need the diffusion, but you also need a relatively large diffusion surface, because that's what makes the light wrap. Now, once you get it into within 2 meters, I usually like to work within maybe 1.5 meters to 2 meters, and that produces the most flattering light. It really wraps nicely. Again, still leaves plenty of contrast, but works well for almost everyone's face. Now, at the same time, Aputure has also released a shoot-through umbrella, so it's sort of a white silk umbrella, and that also works nicely. How do the two compare? Well, let's take a look. You'll notice here as we kind of swipe back and forth, we use the exact same settings on the camera. So we have the same ISO setting, which was ISO 250. Shutter speed was 1/50th of a second, and the aperture was f4. And you'll notice that we're actually getting more light out of the Light Dome versus the umbrella. And the reason for that is that when the light hits the umbrella, some of it actually bounces back and never makes its way all the way through the umbrella. In the case of the Light Dome, on the other hand, it has all this silver reflective material inside, which sort of concentrates the light and makes sure it all moves forward at your talent. My sense is that the Light Dome produces a slightly softer light. You'll notice if you look at the shadows just on the other side of the nose there, that it's just a little bit softer. It's fairly subtle, but you get more light output and you get a softer light overall with the Light Dome. However, the umbrella is a really nice thing to have in your kit as well, because sometimes you want something that's a little bit more contrasty, a little bit harder, and this is also a much less expensive item. So whereas the Light Dome comes in at $150 US, which incidentally, some of you will think, well, gosh, that's kind of expensive. In the grand scheme of things, that's a lot less expensive than most of the competitors with this size and quality of Light Dome or softbox. For example, chimeras of this same size usually come in at about $400 US. Now the umbrella comes in at $29, so it's also very easy to transport, very small, compact. So again, they're kind of two different tools for two different jobs, and I'm glad to have both of them in my kit. One thing that Aputure generally does on most of their products, which I really like, is that they also include a carrying case, something that it makes it very easy to break the light down and take it with you on location. And that's no exception here. They have this carrying case, which is made out of nylon, sort of a Cordura type thing, with pockets for each of the items that you need, including the diffusers. You pack it all up, and it's really easy to transport. Overall, the build, fit, and finish is very good on the Light Dome. All of the fabrics are very thick and sturdy feeling. The seams are all very clean and nicely done. The Velcro is sturdy, holds everything in place really nicely. The rods, very solid, and the mount very solid. It's like a single piece of aluminum. So overall, this really inspires confidence, so they did a nice job on the overall build quality. If I had to cite a downside, I think the only downside really is that it does take a little bit of time to set this up and break it down before and after your shoot. In the case of the Aputure Light Dome, you do have to manually insert and remove the rods that set up and break down. But once you get your technique right, it's reasonable. It doesn't take that long. Both the Light Dome and the Umbrella will be available soon. I'll actually keep you updated if you get yourself subscribed to the channel here. And again, the pricing is $150 US for the Light Dome, $29 US for the Umbrella. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon. One more thing, we do have a new course available for those of you that are interested in sound for film and video. Last year we released a production sound course, which means a course on how to record sound for film and video. This year we have a new course that just came out on how to post-process dialogue audio sound. So if you're interested, go ahead and check that out over at school.learnlightandsound.com.